Hi, I'm Oliver, and this is Deep Cuts, a channel dedicated to music for lovers of music. Well, I was going to do some sort of spiel about, in this dark and difficult year of 2017, these records have been a ray of hope and light, but then I realised that every other music publication seems to have done that this year. So, here are my favourite albums of 2017. Surprisingly, a quarter of the records on this list I didn't actually get around to reviewing this year, so I'll be talking about them fresh, which is quite exciting. So there'll probably be a few surprises on this list. I've also done a Spotify playlist of all my favourite albums of the year, so if you want to go and listen to that, you can follow the link in the description to my Spotify profile. Right, let's get started. David Moore's collective group Bing and Ruth have created a gorgeous, sweeping cinematic record here, and it's built on the subtlety of minimalism and modern classical music. Their label 4AD describes it in this way: minimalist ensemble music with a certain filmic sensitivity, one that prioritized grace and texture over the style's once radical subtraction. From the opening track Starwood Choker, you'll feel the emotive swell from inside your chest, breathy tones, deep bass, delicate broken piano chords. The record has a light feedback to it. It's a gentle hiss throughout all the tracks that reminds you electronic equipment was used to create the majestic sounds you can hear on this album. The unreal crescendo into Bright Light on the track Is Drop is one of the most heart-wrenching things you'll listen to this year. Beautiful, just beautiful. For me, quite possibly a high point in the Ohio hailing band The National. Their seventh record, Sleep Well Beast, just has the feeling of a matured band that appreciates nuance. Nuance is such an approach to this record that they take. Matt Berninger's fragility as a vocalist perfectly narrativizes this collection of tracks, very melancholic tracks, often detailing the breakdowns of relationships and marriage, whilst the more energetic tracks like Day I Die or The System Only Dreams and Total Darkness are brilliant. I think it's the pulled back tracks that are really the ones that hit me on this album. It's tracks like Walk It Back and the emotion of I'll Still Destroy You. The devastating honesty of this record is what gives it so much power, and I've had it on repeat pretty much since December, since its release. It's a very good album. Finding himself in the spotlight twice this year after collaborating with Björk on her most recent album Utopia, it might be easy to forget that Arca dropped an absolute bomb of a solo record in April. Venezuelan-born producer and musician Alejandro Gersi goes by the name Arca, and his self-titled third LP is a dark and rich landscape. And it's not for everyone, admittedly. I know that this was quite a divisive record. A lot of people didn't enjoy it, but I think those that get trapped in its oppressive maze of graphic landscapes only occasionally come up for air. You just find yourself being sucked into this world that Gersi creates. Gersi's falsetto is haunting against the crushing electronic surges and these rippling backgrounds that he creates. The sheer dramatic weight of this record, I think, is something that really hits you. And you can really feel it on a track like Desafio or opening track PL. Arca is a breathing, shifting enigma of an artist, and in my opinion, this work is a work of genius. Legendary artistic polymath Rishi Sakamoto has written so much music. The man literally hasn't stopped in his 4-decade-long career, and even if you don't think you've heard his music, you probably will have at some point. After getting diagnosed with throat cancer in 2014, this is actually Sakamoto's first release since undergoing chemotherapy, and I think with that information comes a kind of fragility that is communicated on the record, but I think what's communicated even clearer by Sakamoto is a joy and an appreciation for life, and I think that comes through on those melodic piano motifs or the playfulness of some of the prepared piano tracks, like on the second track Disintegration. Apparently he approached this record as if it was a soundtrack for a non-existent Tarkovsky film, the director Andrei Tarkovsky, and there's something about the reflexive, fragmented presentation of this record that kind of emanates the work of that filmmaker, I think. Listen to this and get transported to another world. One of the biggest surprises in 2017 for me, Tyler the Creator releases a record of intelligent, emotionally resonant R&B that has the kind of tasty flourishes that made friend and fellow collaborator Frank Ocean's album Blonde such a sumptuous feast. A record full of features yet never outshining Tyler himself. It's his best realised record by a country mile, with sunny West Coast flavoured tracks like See You Again featuring Kali Uchis and two bangers of the year, Who Dat Boy and Ain't Got Time. And Ain't Got Time was actually originally written for Kanye, apparently, but he didn't want to use it. Fool him, because it's a brilliant track. It's great to see what Tyler is capable of with this newly realised maturity, especially as he shows on Flower Boy that he's lost none of his bite due to his change of tact. I think it's a very good album. The best post-punk gospel hybrid of the year. I can say that without a doubt now. The Atlanta, Georgia band's second album is a scorching statement of rage and fury, and it somehow takes the vocal stylings of gospel, marries it with post-punk and even some industrial sounds at times, and makes something that feels urgent and also important. This feels like an important record. Lead and title track The Underside of Power shows off the band's propulsive style. There's a real propulsive quality to this track, but also a knack for writing a hell of a chorus, because once you hear this track, you will not be able to get it out of your head. Vocalist and guitarist Franklin James Fisher is the heart and soul of the band, and he applies his firebrand lyricism to incredible tracks like Cleveland and A Murmur, a Sign. Go and listen. Get your dancing shoes on, boys and girls. Sort of. Geraldine Patton, aka Jlin, is an electronic musician and producer making an amalgam of electronic music and footwork, meaning she really feels rhythm. Her second album, Black Origami, is aptly titled because it's almost like taking percussive sheet music and using it to make some kind of impossibly complex shape. Jlin's rhythmic textures aren't just thrown around, she builds intense walls of sound and really utilises the deep bass motifs against these irregular and hypnotic percussive lines. The track Holy Child is a favourite here for me, and Jlin's fragmented vocal samples inside this cage of rhythms that are just insistent and unrelenting. One of the most original releases of the year. Another huge surprise for me this year, Melodrama has become one of my most played records in the last 6 months, and that's coming off somebody who didn't enjoy Pure Heroin, which was Lord's first record. Ella Yelich O'Connor is still so damn young, but her poetic stories of adulthood have an emotional maturity about them, and it's all brought together with this musical homogeny that really just engages you from start to finish. There's nothing throwaway on here. Everything on Melodrama feels purposeful, and every track deserves to be in this sequence. You have the undertones of 80s synth pop on the Louvre. You have the deft and layered instrumentation of tracks like Homemade Dynamite and Supercut. So much to appreciate. I think this is a really accomplished piece of work. The Swiss piano-led Vein Trio take the work of French composer Maurice Ravel and rework them as jazz pieces, giving us one of the most brilliantly elegant, sophisticated albums of the year. Joining them for this project is British saxophonist Andy Shepherd, and what he brings to the band is more of a capability to tackle these imposing and often knotty but lyrical pieces. The virtuoso musicianship on Vein Plays Ravel is astonishing. It really is. I'm not saying that with, I'm not taking that lightly or anything. Every intricate instrumental line comes together seamlessly, and it just gives you this sense of awe as you listen to it. That's the overriding feeling I get as I listen to this album. The third movement of Le Tombeau de Coupin shows off the band's expert use of dynamic intricacy, and then the centerpiece Bolero, which is a bold reworking of one of the most famous pieces of the 20th century. Please check this out. Alix Cameron's second album is a collection of cheesy 80s pop, a satirical statement at the kind of filthy, cretinous musicians that really should just be ashamed of themselves. But get this, every single song is a masterclass in catchy songwriting, the kind of songs that burrow into your head and don't leave for a week, and all you can do is succumb to them and end up singing along to them, whether you're accompanying the music or you're just singing on your own. Which is probably not great when some of these tracks include lines such as, "I'm waiting for my lover, she's only 17, and "'cause the pussy leaves town when the boss ain't around for the feeding." Yeah, you don't really want to be singing that in Sainsbury's. It's satire though. Tracks like the Chihuahua with its stomping bass and the synth-led Marlon Brando are cheese gold, and it's just such a fun record. Gifted experimental saxophonist Colin Stetson's actually released 2 great records this year. One which was his experimental metal band XI, which was a really interesting record, and then you have this album, his solo album, All This I Do for Glory. This unique record is undoubtedly a highlight of 2017. It's an album that shows off both the capability and diversity of the saxophone as an instrument, but also the talent that one must have to be able to reveal that diversity. And every track has this tangible physicality about it. You can feel Stetson play every note, and you can feel him feel every note as well. 6 tracks long, each piece hypnotically weaves around itself. It fuses the human voice with the sound of woodwind in ways you've probably never heard before. The opening title track is one of the most soporific pieces on here, but then you have the seething virtuosity of Spindrift, which will make you sit up in amazement. It really will. I only just talked about this album on the October Roundup video, and it's quickly become one of my favourite albums of 2017. Kalenna's sultry R&B palette on Take Me Apart is expertly crafted, the crisp and bassy production accompanying the intimate and sexual lyricism. As I talked about in my review, the little production flourishes are really what elevates this record, flitting sounds that appear and then disappear again, and it really shows the level of care and attention that's been applied to this record. Second track, Waiting, marries that sultry R&B sound with a catchy pop hook, but then you have a track like Better, which really shows what Kalenna can do with her commanding voice on a lilting, synth-drenched ballad. Chino Moby is an American producer and musician who founded NON, a collective of artists and musicians who communicate their musical vision through themes of diaspora. No genre is off limits here. As such, Paradiso, the first full-length record by Chino Moby, is a piece of work undefined by the boundaries of geography or genre, which makes it a cryptic, challenging record that will shock you, delight you, surprise you. Switching up between oppressive synth rhythms, industrial barrage, spoken word, music concrete, this record tells the story of a post-American wasteland, and it's not for the faint-hearted. The noise collage of the failed sons and daughters of Fantasia, it assaults you, and it feels like it's assaulting the dramatic spoken word that's accompanying it. The dark post-apocalyptic trap sounds at the end of the track Collapse, at the techno thump of the track Blackout. It's so diverse, and it really will just assault your senses from start to finish, I can guarantee you that. Incredible, a bold, no-holds-barred album. King Cruel, to me, has built on his idiosyncratic songwriting techniques of first record 6 Feet Beneath the Moon, and he made a woozy, unsettling, languid album here, and it's defined as much by the bricolage approach to generic convention as it is the insistent sadness of Archie Marshall's lyricism. And it really is bricolage. We have post-punk sounds, surf rock, garage influences, major 7th chords that make it all feel quite jazzy. The locomotive drips like the ooze of the title, sinister and languorous, and then later on, Check 1 sounds as if it's actually been recorded in liquid somehow. Marshall's now wholly drowned in that ooze itself, the detritus of mankind. Every track to me would be perfectly accompanied by the visual of a flickering street lamp on an urban street in Britain somewhere, both illuminating the street around it and plunging it into darkness. They're the feelings I get with this record, and I think it really does an amazing job at transporting you. Visionary, that's what this is. From one British genius to the next, musician Obaro Ejimiwe, more commonly known as Ghostpoet, released his 4th album in 2017 titled Dark Days and Canapes, and it's a post-punky, electronic, political statement, not unlike Algiers actually. Except Ghostpoet is an artist like no other. Leading his guitar band, his impassioned vocal style is deep and charismatic. It's a drawl that affects and communicates in such a wonderful way. Ghostpoet's theme on Dark Days and Canapes is the depressing state of British society. It's an idea alive in the urgent guitar lines of a track like Many Moods at Midnight, or the groovy headiness of Freak Show. Immigrant Boogie, the lead single, snarls like no other track here. It's explicitly illustrating the plight of immigrants struggling to find a place to live and be safe. He just keeps getting better and better on every single release. Okay, I've realised I've just placed 3 British geniuses in a row on this list, but hey, I'm not being biased, they just all happen to be stellar. Hannah Peel's latest is a concept album about a Yorkshire woman named Mary Cassio journeying off into the stars to find the mystical Cassiopeia, and it's a concept that's delivered through the potent collision of analogue synthesizers and a 29-piece colliery brass band. Hannah marries the organic, breathy tones of the brass with these expansive synths to replicate this interplanetary journey. I feel like it's best sampled on second track Sunrise Through the Dusty Nebula, which has this crescendo with so much emotion and vigour. I actually saw this being performed live a few months ago, and I was really having to stifle the tears pretty much through the entire thing, but specifically through this track as well. Fantastic album and a beautiful musical experience in 2017. Go and listen to this. Unsurprisingly to most, Bristol-based punk band Idols are pretty high on my list this year. Why is that? Well, because they released one of the most ragged, explosive albums of 2017. Brutalism is a tour de force of jagged guitars, galvanic drum beats, and the vigorous vocals of frontman Joe Talbot, easily the most exciting frontman I've seen in years. Idles takes that punk aesthetic and they really run with it, throwing themselves at walls and coming back bloody-faced for even more, cracking apart on tracks like Divide and Conquer, writhing explosively through tracks like Benzocaine. What elevates them, though, is an intelligence revealed on a track like 1049 Gotho, one of my favourite songs of the year, which details the difficulties of mental health, and it's quite a nuanced song lyrically, I think, in some ways. Or Stendhal Syndrome, which wryly sends up the notion of criticism and subjectivity in art. Alongside that, you have shouts against the Tory party, so they're definitely entrenched in British politics. They have ideas and they have themes that they want to communicate, and they do that without ever losing the sense of fun. One of the best bands to emerge in a long while. I will not stop championing them. This is a great album. Experimental art rock group Shoo Shoo have long been an exciting prospect, certainly to me. They create music as engaging as it can be challenging. With Forget, the 10th Shoo Shoo record, Jamie Stewart and co take that abrasive, jagged approach crafted from previous albums and collaborations with people like Merzbow, and they use it to develop tracks that are properly catchy, almost pop hooks in places. The result is an album that is sawtoothed as much as it is immediately unforgettable. Each track brings something original and intrepid to the project. And that's the way I felt on a first listen. I think the speed at which Shoo Shoo can communicate their intent on Forget reveals how successful they are with this album. It hits you immediately. It doesn't lose any of its complexity, it's just more immediate. The gentle guitar line and percussive plod of the track Get Up accompanies Stewart's fragile vocal, and it's an atmosphere really beautifully created that gets pierced by Stewart himself with this brazen shout where he goes, "Rise from the dead," and it's a moment that somehow feels instantly iconic. Elsewhere, the title track Forget is full-on terrifying, Stewart's anguished vocals tearing you even at the first listen. Daring, original, unforgettable. Yeah, that's it. The album called Forget is the album that I cannot forget. In at number 2 is surprisingly an album that I haven't got around to talking about on the channel before. San Francisco experimental rock band Oxbow's 7th LP, Thin Black Duke, is one of the most enthralling, awe-inspiring things I heard in 2017. In their music, they take inspiration from noise rock, jazz, blues, and countless other genres to construct this cocktail of sounds that will leave your head spinning, and in my case, begging for more. Vocalist Eugene S. Robinson is an incredibly magnetic performer, shifting seamlessly from necrotic whispers to anguished whimpers to spoken word, which is quite theatrical, to these incessant screams. He has a very impressive range. Second track, Eke Homo, has this oddly romantic flavour about it. It's accented with string parts that build to this incredible crescendo moment with Robinson's soaring vocal part. It gives me shivers every time I listen to it. It has so much raw power and beauty in it. On a track like Letter of Note, Robinson sounds like he's channeling Mike Patton. His vocals are deliciously dark and they are replicating that kind of style that Patton's so well known for. Ugh, I cannot say enough good things about this record. I implore you to check it out. Those of you that have been following the channel for a while and my social media outlets, etc., probably won't be surprised that I have picked Somi's Petite Afrique for my top slot in 2017. New York-based artist Somi has taken the theme of cultural diaspora and written an album dedicated to 116th Street in Harlem, a place threatened by the sweeping gentrification of urban life. Her music is a sonorous combination of jazz and African influences, showing off her ability to create expansive, untethered tracks like Alien, and then all of a sudden following that up with an infectious track like Black Enough, which has these blaring, big band horns interjecting throughout. Holy Room is hands down my favourite song of the year. Genuinely, it's a delicate R&B ballad preaching love and forgiveness in a world that should probably sit up and take note. It's profound, truly profound. This is a masterpiece. I think this is a completely wonderful album that has so much to offer on many multiple listens, and I really urge everybody that's watching this video to go out and support Somi and listen to this album and experience it. Thank you, Somi, for creating an album that I will be listening to for a very long time. And they are my favourite records of 2017. Thank you for watching, thank you for supporting Deep Cuts in 2017. It's certainly been a hell of a year. This is my last video of the year. I'll be back in January at some point. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday period, spend time with your loved ones, your friends and family, and recharge ready for the new year. I'll see you on the other side.